Unfortunately, some of the poorest countries in the world are located in Africa. But the irony is that some of the richest countries when it comes to natural resources are also located in Africa. That's when things seem a little shady. How can countries rich in resources turn out to be most poverty-ridden, where the general population lives below the poverty line? Well, it turns out that there are some reasons, the structural ones, that have kept Africa this way, even after decades of their independence. European countries, despite having no vast reserves of natural resources, are the most developed, but African countries are some of the most undeveloped countries. They have oil, natural gas, diamonds, gold, silver, platinum, uranium, lithium, and most precious resources, but they don't make a difference. However, in this video, besides knowing what these poorest African countries are, you will know how their former colonial powers have kept them poor. Let's get started. Number 10. Eritrea. Eritrea is located in the Horn of Africa region in Eastern Africa and is one of the most impoverished nations worldwide, with a substantial segment of its population living below the poverty line. Poverty in Eritrea is characterized by a widespread lack of access to critical services, infrastructure, and economic prospects. Eritrea's economy ranks as one of the weakest on a global scale, partly due to its composition. A significant part of the nation's GDP relies on remittances sent by Eritrean citizens living in Europe and other developed regions. The majority of the remaining GDP is derived from internal industry and services, while agriculture, despite employing 80% of the population, contributes merely 13% to the economy. Agricultural issues in Eritrea have far-reaching effects on another major driver of poverty: hunger. Approximately 2/3 of households throughout the country grapple with food insecurity, a challenge that the government has faced since gaining independence in 1992 without significant progress. This threat is more pronounced in rural areas, as is the case in many nations. Educational challenges compound the issue of poverty in Eritrea. While primary education is compulsory, it is not provided free of charge. The government has made attempts to enhance educational access, but the quality of education remains subpar. The literacy rate is estimated at around 73%, with a substantial gender gap. Limited access to education and training opportunities curtails the ability of Eritreans to advance their economic prospects. One of the reasons why Eritrea remains poor is it has been grappling with conflict and instability for an extended period, including a 30-year war for independence from Ethiopia, which culminated in 1991. The government has implemented a controversial program of mandatory conscription into national service, comprising both military and civilian duties of indefinite duration. The protracted national service, in effect for 18 years, has compelled a majority of the adult population into service in exchange for meager financial support, leading to a high poverty rate. Many Eritreans depend on assistance from relatives in the diaspora for their survival, effectively barring them from opportunities to secure a decent livelihood. This situation has prompted a continuous exodus. According to the UNDP's 2019 Human Development Index, Eritrea occupied the 180th position out of 189 countries, indicating a very low level of socioeconomic development, with a low score of 0.45. All the reasons that keep Eritrea poor are directly linked with the enduring influence of former colonial powers. Eritrea was once an Italian colony until the events of World War II, which led to its occupation by British forces. After the war, Eritrea came under British administration and eventually became a UN trust territory, jointly administered by Britain and Ethiopia. Eritrea's aspirations for independence and self-determination set the stage for a convoluted series of negotiations and conflicts, ultimately culminating in its federation with Ethiopia in 1952. Even though Eritrea gained independence, the legacy of colonialism and the geopolitical interests of former colonial powers have contributed significantly to Eritrea's persistent poverty. Eritrea's strategic location along the Red Sea and its proximity to crucial trade routes render it a region of interest for global powers. At times, the priorities of external powers have taken priority over Eritrea's internal development. Critics argue that the divide and rule policies implemented by colonial powers may have exacerbated ethnic and political divisions within Eritrea, making it challenging for the nation to unite and concentrate on economic and social advancement. Number 9. Niger. Niger is a landlocked country in West Africa and is among the world's poorest nations, with a significant portion of its population living below the poverty line. It possesses valuable natural resources, including uranium, oil, and gold. However, multinational corporations have extracted the country's uranium reserves, often at the expense of its citizens. The government has faced criticism for allowing foreign entities to exploit these resources without adequately compensating the local population. As a result, Niger's resources have enriched foreign firms, while its own citizens continue to endure poverty. As for its economy, it lacks diversification, with agriculture constituting 40% of its GDP. The nation heavily depends on foreign aid and remittances from its overseas citizens. Extreme poverty is projected to affect 44.1% of the population in 2023. The lack of economic diversity and the heavy reliance on agriculture make Nigeria susceptible to external shocks, such as droughts and fluctuations in global commodity prices. To further exacerbate the situation, Niger has experienced persistent conflict and instability for many years, including attacks by extremist groups like Boko Haram. In response, the government has established a heavily militarized society to combat these threats, resulting in human rights abuses and insufficient investment in social services. The ongoing conflict has also led to the displacement of many people, creating a severe humanitarian crisis. However, all the causes of poverty cluster around a single one: exploitation by former colonial powers. Niger, like numerous African nations, underwent colonization by European powers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In particular, France governed Niger as part of French West Africa. During the colonial period, these powers extracted valuable natural resources, including minerals and agricultural products, often to the cost of the local population. This legacy of colonialism bequeathed an economic structure that prioritized the extraction and export of raw materials over the development of a diversified, self-sustaining economy. Now, the former colonial powers, alongside multinational corporations from these nations, maintain substantial control and sway over Niger's resources, economy, and politics. Yes, Niger is abundantly endowed with natural resources, including uranium, which has attracted foreign interest and exploitation. However, foreign companies have disproportionately profited from these resources while offering insufficient compensation and benefits to the local population. Number 8. Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo is located in Central Africa and is the second largest country in Africa. However, it ranks among the world's most impoverished nations, with over 60 million people living under $2.15 a day. Persistent instability stemming from years of wars and political upheaval is a primary driver of poverty in the DRC. The nation has experienced decades of conflict and violence, resulting in the displacement of populations and a severe humanitarian crisis. The struggle for control over the DRC's valuable raw materials claims an estimated 10,000 civilian lives each month. This ongoing conflict has also resulted in inadequate investments in crucial social services, including healthcare and education, further exacerbating the high poverty rate. Despite being rich in natural resources like cobalt, copper, and gold, the DRC faces challenges related to resource exploitation. Multinational corporations have often exploited these resources. The government has faced criticism for permitting foreign entities to extract these resources without adequately compensating the local population. Consequently, the DRC's resources are utilized to enrich foreign corporations, while its citizens remain rooted in poverty. But all these reasons for poverty find their roots in Congo's colonial history. Various colonial powers ruled it, and when they exited, they left their legacies. Often, they were replaced by multinational companies, which apparently did not rule, but kept these former colonies poor. Number 7. Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is located on the southwest coast of West Africa, with a population of 8.4 million. 59.2% of this population lives in poverty, while an additional 21% is vulnerable to poverty. Sierra Leone has endured a protracted history of wars and political unrest, making it a leading cause of poverty in the country. For decades, the nation has grappled with conflict and violence, resulting in the displacement of populations and a severe humanitarian crisis. The extended conflicts have also translated into insufficient investments in critical social services like healthcare and education, thus exacerbating the high poverty rate. However, Sierra Leone is abundantly blessed with natural resources, including diamonds, gold, and iron ore. Yet, it could never benefit from them as multinational corporations have capitalized on these resources, often at the expense of the nation's citizens. Undoubtedly, the government in Sierra Leone is responsible for permitting foreign companies to extract these resources without adequately compensating the local population. However, due to structurally being weak, the government did not have any other option than to allow companies to exploit. Therefore, these foreign companies have enriched themselves while offering minor benefits to Sierra Leone. As for its economy, a major portion of GDP comes from agriculture, with the nation heavily dependent on foreign aid and remittances from Sierra Leoneans living abroad. This over-reliance on agriculture has made Sierra Leone susceptible to external shocks, such as droughts and fluctuations in global commodity prices. The country exhibits one of the world's lowest Human Development Index scores, reflecting decades marked by conflict and fragility, impeding development. Disease plays a pivotal role in perpetuating poverty in Sierra Leone. Prominent diseases like cholera, hepatitis A, malaria, polio, measles, and typhoid fever continue to be widespread. HIV/AIDS affects 1.5% of the Sierra Leonean population. The healthcare system in Sierra Leone remains inadequate, with hospitals often being understaffed and ill-equipped. All this is due to the structural control by former colonial powers, who keep it in a state of impoverishment. These former colonial powers have established a system that benefits them at the expense of Sierra Leone. This system includes resource exploitation, unfavorable trade agreements, and support for corrupt leaders willing to serve the interests of the former colonial powers. That's why, despite having vast reserves of diamonds, which is one of the most precious resources, Sierra Leone stays unfairly poor. Multinational companies control the mining sites, finding diamonds and sending them to their own countries, offering only pennies to Sierra Leone. In 2022, Sierra Leone produced 70,000 carats of diamonds, yet the nation stays poor. Number 6. Madagascar. Madagascar is located off the southeast coast of Africa and is the second largest island country in the world. 79.8% of its population lives under the poverty line, making it one of the poorest nations worldwide. This is partly due to the kleptocratic rule. During the era of kleptocratic governance under the French-backed dictator Didier Ratsiraka, government officials misappropriated millions of dollars meant for aid and development. Yes, corruption takes a heavy toll on developing economies by discouraging private sector growth, deterring foreign investors, eroding government credibility, and hampering poverty reduction. Kleptocrats believe that capturing a large share of a stable or shrinking economy benefits them more than obtaining a diminishing portion of a growing one. Despite achieving independence in 1960, Madagascar's economy still functions like a colony heavily reliant on resource extraction. Inadequate investment in sustainable industries has left the nation vulnerable to global commodity price fluctuations. Multinational corporations have exploited the country's resources, stealing and exporting them to their home countries, leaving none for Madagascar. Not only that, but Madagascar's infrastructure is deficient, with only 11% of its roads being paved. Environmental factors, such as cyclones, often damage roads and bridges, impeding the transportation of goods and services. This infrastructural shortfall has hindered economic diversification and the attraction of foreign investment. Madagascar's poverty results from the structural control exerted by former colonial powers who perpetuate its impoverishment. These former colonial powers have established a system that primarily serves their interests at the expense of Madagascar. If Madagascar wants to continue existing, it has to allow foreign companies to exploit its resources to receive the minimal returns that can run its economy. This system includes resource exploitation, unfavorable trade agreements, and support for corrupt leaders willing to advance the former colonial power's interests. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Number 5. Mozambique. Mozambique is located in southern Africa with a population of 32 million. But 62% of the population lives below the poverty line and earns less than $1.90 a day. This brings the worst poverty crisis in the country, where affording basic necessities of life becomes a challenge. Despite gaining independence in 1975, Mozambique's economic structure still resembles that of a colony, heavily reliant on resource extraction. Since the country does not have developed an infrastructure to benefit from its resources, multinational corporations have exploited the country's resources. The benefits that should have been offered to the people of Mozambique find their way to these foreign companies. Despite being poverty-ridden, the country is trying to come out of the cycle of structural problems created by poverty. The nation has successfully decreased infant and maternal mortality, extended life expectancy, and improved access to education, water, and electricity. Over the past 15 years, Mozambique has reduced its multidimensional poverty rates from 92.8% to 71%, and its Human Development Index has risen from 0.27 in 1990 to 0.446 in 2018. Nevertheless, Mozambique continues to grapple with various obstacles as it tries to further alleviate poverty. Number 4. Natural resources, including diamonds, gold, and oil, it is unable to exploit it by itself. That's where multinational companies come to plunder them. They exploit these resources, offering the Central African Republic minimal returns that are sufficient not to collapse. However, compared to the international market, these returns are a fraction of the original commodity prices. Number 3. Somalia. Somalia is located in the Horn of Africa, in East Africa, with a population of 17 million. Despite having vast natural resources, 69% of its population lives in poverty, earning less than $1.90 a day. In other words, 7 in every 10 people in Somalia are extremely poor. Like other African countries, Somalia has been cursed with poverty due to its colonial history, which has created never-ending cycles of problems for it. Somalia has been grappling with extended periods of warfare and political upheaval, becoming one of the most critical drivers of poverty in the nation. Decades of conflict and violence have resulted in a severe humanitarian crisis, displacing populations. This ongoing conflict has also hindered investments in essential social services like healthcare and education, contributing to the high poverty rate. What's more, Somalia has been struck by a series of devastating droughts and famines, leading to widespread hunger and malnutrition. In 2011, over 250,000 Somalis perished due to famine induced by drought, with half of the victims being children. The current drought in Somalia is predicted to worsen, posing a significant threat to a larger number of people. Drought and locust infestations have devastated farms and pastoral lands, resulting in total crop failures and the loss of over 3 million livestock. Agricultural production has virtually halted in certain regions. The ongoing hunger crisis has left 7.1 million Somalis unable to meet their daily food requirements. Somalia's enduring poverty can be traced back to its colonial history, which has had a profound and lasting impact on the nation. Its colonial history has left it with artificial and often poorly defined borders. Various European powers, including the British, Italians, and French, colonized the country. When these colonial rulers withdrew in the mid-20th century, they left behind a nation with borders that did not align with the ethnic, cultural, or historical realities of the Somali people. This has led to internal divisions and conflicts within Somalia, disrupting political stability and hindering economic development. What's more, during the colonial era, Somalia's resources, including livestock and agricultural products, were exploited by the colonial powers. This exploitation left the country economically weakened. The legacy of resource extraction continues, with multinational corporations exploiting Somalia's resources to this day. This exploitation has hindered the country's economic growth and contributed to widespread poverty. The colonial rule also left Somalia with institutions and governance structures that often served the interests of the colonial powers rather than those of the Somali people. After gaining independence, this legacy of weak governance, corruption, and a lack of institutional capacity persisted, afflicting the nation. These challenges have hindered economic development and fueled poverty. Number 2. Burundi. Burundi is a landlocked country in East Africa, with a population of 12.55 million. Out of this population, about 71% live in the worst poverty. What's troubling is this percentage is increasing swiftly, as back in 2013, the poverty percentage was 65. Burundi, like many other African nations, has encountered significant obstacles resulting from its colonial history and the actions of multinational corporations. Colonial powers, including Germany and Belgium, divided Africa into artificial entities, without consideration for the existing ethnic, cultural, or historical realities of the region. When these colonial powers withdrew, they left behind nations with borders that often divided ethnic groups, creating internal tensions. In Burundi, colonial boundaries surrounded various ethnic communities, contributing to post-colonial ethnic conflicts. What's more, colonial administrations frequently employed divide-and-rule tactics to maintain control. They emphasized differences among ethnic groups and established hierarchies that favored specific groups over others. These divisions endured beyond independence, leading to political and social conflicts in post-colonial Burundi. Colonial governments typically established institutions and governance structures to serve their interests rather than those of the local population. After gaining independence, these institutions, marked by weak governance, corruption, and a lack of capacity, continued to hinder Burundi's development. During the colonial period, Burundi's resources, including agricultural products, were often exploited for the benefit of the colonial powers. This exploitation led to economic inequality and the concentration of resources in the hands of the colonial elite. After independence, these patterns of resource exploitation persisted. After independence, multinational corporations replaced the colonial masters and continued exploitation of Burundi's resources, impeding the country's economic growth. These corporations have faced accusations of exploiting resources such as minerals, coffee, and tea, often without providing fair compensation to the local population. Number 1. Western Sahara. Western Sahara is a contested territory in North Africa that has yet to achieve its independence. Western Sahara, which was initially a Spanish colony, became part of Morocco in 1975, sparking a prolonged territorial dispute between Morocco and the indigenous Sahrawi people, represented by the Polisario Front. After a 16-year insurgency, a UN-brokered ceasefire was established in 1991, along with a commitment to organize a referendum for independence, though this vote has yet to occur. The contested region features a demilitarized zone known as a berm, characterized by landmines and military fortifications. This berm effectively divides the western part under Moroccan control from the eastern section governed by the Polisario Front. The Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, proclaimed by the Polisario Front in 1976, is acknowledged by numerous governments and holds full membership in the African Union. The country, aside from its phosphate reserves and the plentiful fishing areas off its coast, is also believed to possess untapped offshore oil reserves. However, monetizing these resources and getting out of poverty becomes a challenge due to the ongoing conflict and territorial dispute. The enduring conflict and territorial dispute between Morocco and the Polisario Front have significantly impeded economic progress in the region. The lack of resolution regarding Western Sahara's status has led to instability, making it challenging to attract investments and stimulate economic growth. It can be said that Western Sahara sits on precious natural resources, but cannot benefit from them. Unless the conflict is resolved, the country cannot attract investments and benefit from its resources, staying as one of the poorest countries in not only Africa but in the world. International parameters do not apply to people living in Western Sahara because people have no way to earn. The only thing they do is to find a food source and stay alive, something which is far below the poverty the world knows about. What do you think? Can these African countries develop if they are freed from the exploitation of European countries and companies? What can these countries do to get out of the conflicts that were deliberately created to keep them poor? Let us know your thoughts on whether you earlier thought African countries were inherently poor. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.